This is Goku-san, DBZ, and welcome back to my YouTube channel for a new episode of Good or Bad. Now, as I said before, this is a segment to discuss about things that are on my mind, as well as just in general things that I've been thinking about and want to do a video about. Last time, of course, I did video games, good or bad. Now, this time, I will be discussing something else. And that is art. Art, good or bad. Now, in this case, of course, this can have many different meanings and many different beliefs on things. Like, what is art? I mean, for instance, you have things like this, posters, displaying wonderful artwork and stuff. You could consider that art. Traditional paintings. Also, you could consider such as comic books, video games, as well as, I guess you could say, sculpture, statues, from some perspectives, maybe even, of course, movies, music. Art comes in many forms. Now, sometimes we ask, is all art good or bad? Well, keep in mind, art is very subjective when it comes down to it. Art is really hard to say. It's really neither good nor bad, because art can be used as both a symbol for good and bad, because even symbols, for instance, could be used as good or bad, because symbols are also considered a piece of artwork. So, for instance, symbols can be used for both good and bad alike. Like, for instance, I guess you could say symbol that's been used for both sides, good and bad. Being one of the oldest known symbols in human society, of course, that being obviously the swastika. Now, in modern day, the 20th and 21st century, we only more or less know the swastika as a symbol of evil, of racism in the world. But thousands of years prior, and from multiple amount of time, even in America up into the 1920s, the swastika has always been a symbol for actually prosperity, peace, and goodwill. It was only Hitler that turned a symbol of good into a symbol of evil. Now, you could say that about many religions and cults that adopt symbols and then completely reverse what the symbol originally stood for. Perfect example of this outside of, say, the swastika, which of course origins go back into like Buddhism and even farther back into Hinduism, which of course Hinduism is one of the oldest known religions. Now, other things like, for instance, you have many forms of, say, one of the most common symbols in society, of course, today, the cross. Of course, nowadays, we know the cross best for being a symbol of Christianity. But the cross originally was actually used by the pagans, and then was adopted later on by the Christian Church. Of course, the Catholic Church uses an alternate version, of course, that being Jesus dying on the cross, and that being of course, the crucifix, rather than the traditional cross. But the ancient Egyptians were the first known society to actually use the cross. But of course, the original version had more like a circle at the top, rather than a line at the top. Like the cross of today, of course. So you have to understand these facts, is that the fact of the matter is that the cross is a piece of art, same as all symbols are a piece of art. And there's many different interpretations and versions of course, the cross. One of the best and easiest version to be able to tell this is probably one of the most artistic versions of the cross, for instance, is, of course, the Celtic cross, which the Celts used and adopted. And that partially had to do with somewhat, though, also the influence of a well-known Catholic who ended up getting his own holiday, and of course that being St. Patrick, which also helped influence the execution of all snakes in, of course, Ireland. Ireland is pretty much the only place in the world that is pretty much free of snakes. Also, there's no wolves. There's no dominant predators on the island of Ireland. There really isn't. They've completely wiped out all major predators with things such as the Irish wolfhound. But this isn't a history lesson. This is a lesson on whether or not art is good or bad. As I said, with like swastika, the cross, the crescent moon, and many other symbols in society, in religion, and in other areas of society, art is very subjective. That's the major thing you have to remember when it comes, in general, overall viewpoint to art. It's very subjective, and it's interpreted in the eye of that particular person to how they perceive that artwork. So you have to keep that in mind. Like, for instance, say one of the most common, best examples of interpreting something differently than other people is, of course, art that is known as abstract art, which can have a different meaning for a different person because they may see something differently than another person sees in that photo. And really, it works on a subconscious level, you could say, really, overall. That's one thing you have to keep in mind about things like art. It does sometimes work on the subconscious level rather than the normal consciousness level. And that's something we have to keep in mind. Now, of course, another example of how art can be interpreted good or bad. Probably one of the best examples is the universal language, which is also a form of art, and of course that being music. Music is used by all religions, pretty much, except for a few nutty ones here and there, cults. But music really is the universal language, because you have it available in pretty much all languages, all walks of life, all cultures, history going back thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or further back years. And it's definitely the most subjective, I guess you could say, form of art, is definitely music. Because it can be used to make someone angry, aggressive, and want to hurt people, like certain types of like gangster rap, or certain types of like death or black metal. Could be that way. But it also depends on, I guess you could say, a person's temperament, as well as a person's own mindset, really, to how they're going to react to music for the most part. Now, one of the things you have to keep in mind when it comes to, of course, how somebody's going to react. Now, of course, you have many different types of music, and people emotionally, on different levels, are going to react a different way to that particular type of music. So you have to keep that also in mind. Same thing as like video games and things, which is just another form of art, of course. And there's many distinctive styles of art, and we see that like in video games, for instance. Like, we have the 8-bit, the 16-bit games, you have like current day games, you have like the super high resolution, super high quality, realistic graphics of, say, the Final Fantasy franchise. Then you have a little different style CG art of, like, say, Kingdom Hearts. And then, if you want to go more in animation, anime route, artistically, you have like a Jet Run Rayo, Jet Set Rayo Future, Sunset Overdrive, and games such as that. But the point is that we have many forms of art, whatever genre of art you want to call it, because music is its own genre of art, really. And one of the fascinating things that actually helps influence, believe it or not, a lot of particular artists, say, in the metal community, such as artists like a really well-known heavy metal, Viking/death metal band, Amon Amarth. What is their music about? Even though it's super hard and stuff, or as I like to call cookie monster metal, all the songs is artistic because it's about their being loyal to their mythology. And that being, of course, their music is dedicated to, like, Thor, Odin, and Loki, the Norwegian gods of ancient myth and legends. The Viking gods, really, if you will. And it's really fascinating hearing these very fascinating and interesting stories that they weave like a mural, really, you could say, or weave like clothing. But really, when it comes down to it, it's just fascinating, really, to hear some of like the music and stuff. And it's interesting to hear influences like for Amon Amarth. What is the greatest inspiration to them, other than like Norwegian mythology and stories of the ancient gods and of Valhalla, and of course Asgard, is also folk music. Folk is the biggest influence on the genre known as Viking metal. Actually, in a lot of Viking metal, they actually use the music and stuff, folk style music, and then just make it into a heavy metal form of that music. Sometimes they'll even combine heavy metal and folk music together. It's really a fascinating combination sometimes when you listen to it. I mean, heck, I've heard some like combining heavy metal and polka together. Now picture that, if you will. Polka metal. It's actually kind of cool and interesting. I recommend you actually check out if you get a chance. Check out some Viking metal as well. But also, like, you have bands like Cradle of Filth, which is probably the most successful black metal band, hard as can be. But guess what kind of music influences their creativity and stuff? You'd be surprised. Opera and classical music is the biggest inspiration. In fact, a lot of your heavy metal and metal artists, one of the biggest inspirations to them a lot of times is actually classical music. And there are artists who have managed to merge heavy metal and opera together, such as bands like Epica, which I highly recommend people check out, as well as bands such as Nightwish. And if you don't believe me that metal or hard rock and classical opera can go together perfectly, check out these two bands I just mentioned, Epica and Nightwish, and I'll prove you otherwise. In particular, when you hear a good sound with opera, listen to She Is My Sin by Nightwish. It will blow you away, as well as their version of Phantom of the Opera, which is an incredible piece of art in its own right. And also other forms of art we see in the world. Look at trees, like gardens and stuff, people arranging plants a certain way for an artistic viewpoint. Or the way somebody cuts a shrub or a tree to take the shape of something that they are inspired by to do. This is also art. And the main theme to art is it is very subjective. And sometimes art can be used for bad purposes. This is true. Like, as I mentioned, that some symbols have been adopted and turned for bad uses. Like the swastika with the Nazis, and like some occult groups stole the pentacle or pentagram of the pagans and then turned it upside down into the upside down pentagram, and then used that to gain power, spiritual power as well as political power and stuff, because people don't realize the power of a symbolism is. It's actually very powerful. And this some artists understand, because you can harness a great amount of power even just through art. Whether it be a movie. Example of art, like making a beautiful, like painting of sorts, but in theatrical stance. Lord of the Rings movies, Star Wars, Harry Potter. And that's the thing. You also have great art like writing, for instance, like novels writing. J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, J.K. Rowling, Philip Pullman, and many other greats. Modern day, of course, also writers. You have greats like Stephen King and many others. So, basically, my point is this. Art will always be a subjective thing. Just like music will always be subjective. And styles of art will always be subjective, whether it's I guess you could say whether it's something such as abstract or not. It's all about how we perceive the stuff mentally in our own brains. That is the real trick in things to understanding art. It's all about the mindset. For instance, I saw a movie today. From an acting standpoint and an overall quality filmmaking standpoint, not the most impressive film, but from an artistic standpoint of the beautiful scenery and how you CG for doing incredible stuff. Yeah, it blew my mind, some of the beautiful art designs and stuff and the creative things they did with it. Alice Through a Looking Glass, as I said, not a great movie from a acting point of view or from an overall film-making point of view, but from an artistic point of view, it's beautiful. It's really a masterpiece on how well they used the CG in the movie. They used it with a perfect balance. Some moments, yeah, a little heavy on the CG. It's obvious this movie relied more on the CG, the special effects and stuff, more so than the actors' acting ability. And some of these actors are great actors and actresses, to be fair, such as Johnny Depp. The problem is there's only some movies that really challenge their acting abilities. For Johnny Depp last year, of course, you have an incredible film he did, and I highly recommend to check it out. Don't you hate when you forget, though, the name of a film or something? Trust me, I'll remember it. Black Mass. But, incredible film, and he does an incredible, superb acting job in it. But, with that said, yes, indeed, in the end, I'll try to get ready to cut this video up so it doesn't go on too long, but I thought once I tried doing video also standing up rather than sitting down in a chair like I always normally do. Thought I'd try something different. And, yeah, as you can see, I got some different posters and stuff because I've been rearranging things. But I've got some of the other posters I normally have in the background also done. But I got this here, that way I can stand up occasionally rather than always sit down doing my videos. But I hope you like this, and tell me what your thoughts are on art. What artistically influenced you in life for me? Now, if you want to go art, for instance, like great influences, artistically speaking, from like Japanese culture for me, manga and stuff, it would have to be, of course, the Japanese artist Akira Toriyama, which of course created Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, as well as incredible video games like the Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior series, and also Chrono Trigger, and many other things. And from a artistic storytelling point of view, with anime and stuff from Studio Ghibli, of course that being Miyazaki, the greatest anime director of all time as far as I'm concerned. Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli has done some real masterpieces from a anime and movie point of view. I mean, it's insane how beautiful some of it is. Such as beautiful films like Spirited Away, Castle in the Sky, Princess Mononoke, Kiki's Delivery Service, Tales from Earthsea. I mean, there's so many great Miyazaki films to name. It's really hard to pick one favorite, frankly. But, and of course, of American artists or comic book artists, of course, that would easily probably have to be Todd McFarlane, creator of Spawn, and my favorite era of Spider-Man comics, as well as amazing designing the look of Venom, of course. Incredible artist of drawing, not the best when it comes to storytelling, which is a different aspect of art. But I hope you enjoy this. Please leave a comment below. Thumbs this video up, like, subscribe, follow me at twitter.com/GokuSunDBZ, as well as on Google+. And until next time, may you all have a good rest of today, Memorial Day, from here in the United States. And I'll see you all again soon enough, back here in YouTube land. And I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know if you would like to see me do any more, good or bads. And what subjects would you like to hear my thoughts on, and actually look into and put more thought into. Because as I said, these, for the most part, are things that I'm doing when I feel inspired to do them, and to discuss more in depth about these things from a more logical, theological standpoint, rather than just a biased one view compared to some YouTubers here. Like, say, I'll quickly mention some one-sided viewers such as The Amazing Atheist, and others. So, yeah, anyways, I'll see you again here soon enough. And as I said, please check out some of that music I recommended from Epica and Nightwish. And see you all again here soon enough. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.